Tick-Infested horse left to die, but a stranger changes its fate. In the vastness of a forgotten farm where the wind whispered stories of abandonment through the dry grass, Zeus, a once majestic horse, roamed alone beneath a sky heavy with gray clouds. His body, once strong and vigorous, was now covered in ticks that consumed his last strength, turning him into a shadow of the animal he once was. His heavy hooves dragged across the dusty ground, while his eyes, still bright despite the suffering, reflected the dignity of a glorious past. The distant sound of tractors and the occasional lowing of cattle were his only companions in the desolate fields of the decaying property. Zeus bore the marks of years of neglect on his lean body. Each step was a silent testament to his struggle for survival. The ticks, like relentless little parasites, covered his skin, becoming a visible symbol of human disregard. However, even amidst pain and abandonment, something in the way he held his head high suggested that his spirit remained indomitable, perhaps awaiting the moment when his fate would be rewritten by kinder hands. In the solitude of the fields, Zeus nurtured a deep desire for freedom and acceptance in his heart. His weary eyes still sought on the horizon the hope of a different dawn, where he could find a place to call home. The old horse dreamed of a sanctuary where his wounds, both physical and emotional, could finally heal. During starry nights when the farm's silence was broken only by the chirping of crickets, Zeus recalled the days when he galloped freely through the green fields, feeling the wind caress his mane. Now, his greatest longing was simply to find someone who could see beyond his debilitated appearance, someone who recognized the noble spirit still beating in his chest. With each sunrise, Zeus silently renewed his prayers for a miracle that could free him from that gloomy existence. His body might be weakened by the parasites that consumed him, but his soul remained proud, like a flame that refuses to extinguish even in the fiercest storms. Among the shadows of the old barns and the distant murmur of the creek, Zeus patiently awaited the moment his destiny would change. There was something mystical about his persistence, as if an ancient and sacred force kept him standing, whispering promises of better days into his ears. His heart beat to the rhythm of an old melody, a song of hope echoing through the ages, waiting for the right moment to be heard by someone capable of understanding his silent language. The situation on the farm rapidly deteriorated. The new owners, after acquiring the property at a foreclosure auction, arrived with grand plans for modernization and efficiency. To them, every square foot needed to generate profit, and every animal had to justify its existence through productivity. Zeus, in his debilitated state, was merely a burden, an uncomfortable reminder of the former administration's decaying past. One particularly cold morning, Foreman Robert met with the new owners in the dusty office of the headquarters. Between cups of strong coffee and cost spreadsheets, they coldly discussed the fate of the old horse. The peeling walls seemed to absorb every cruel word spoken in that meeting, while the faded portrait of the former owner silently watched the scene. "The animal only consumes resources," declared one of the owners, adjusting his gold-framed glasses. "It isn't useful for breeding, let alone for work. It's a dead weight." The words fell heavy like stones in the charged atmosphere, echoing, a sentence that already seemed written in the shadows dancing around the room's corners. The plan was simple and brutal in its execution. Zeus would be led to the farm's farthest edges and abandoned to his own fate. A slow and silent death, away from civilization's eyes, where his suffering wouldn't disturb anyone's conscience. The men tried to mask the cruelty of their decision with practical arguments about costs and benefits. While the men plotted his destiny, Zeus grazed near the old barn, unaware of the machinations that would determine his future. The afternoon, sun cast long shadows on the beaten earth, and the wind carried the sweet scent of freshly cut grass. The ticks continued their macabre feast on his weakened body, each bite a constant reminder of his precarious condition. The farm's oldest workers, those who had known Zeus since his glory days, whispered among themselves, powerless in the face of the situation. Some remembered when he pulled heavy wagons without complaint, or carried children on their Sunday rides. Now, those memories seemed to belong to another life, as distant as the stars shining in the night sky. Zeus's fate seemed sealed, marked by greed and the coldness of hearts hardened by ruthless capitalism. The farm, once a place of honest life and work, was transforming into a profit altar, where there was no room for sentimentality or compassion. The old horse had become an involuntary symbol of the transition between two worlds. The old, with its values of loyalty and respect for life, and the new, where everything boiled down to numbers in a spreadsheet. The gears of this relentless machine were already in motion. In a few days, when the new moon brought complete darkness, Zeus would be silently led away to a place where his desperate whinny wouldn't disturb the new owner's sleep. The farm's heavy air seemed to carry the omen of this sentence, while dark clouds gathered on the horizon, like silent witnesses to a tragedy about to unfold. The day that Michael traveled along the rural roads was particularly gray, with heavy clouds announcing an imminent storm. As a traveling veterinarian, he was accustomed to covering long distances in search of animals needing care, carrying, in his old pickup truck, a series of medications and equipment that represented his ambulant hope for rescue. That specific afternoon, the universe seemed to conspire for a meeting that would completely change his trajectory. The pickup's engine produced a constant, almost hypnotic noise when Michael's eyes caught something on the desolate horizon, a thin and stumbling body covered by a dark cloud of parasites. Zeus didn't even lift his head when the vehicle approached. His posture revealed a deep resignation, as if he had already given up any expectation of salvation. The ticks danced on his skin, forming a moving web that seemed to consume every inch of his exhausted body. Michael slowly got out of the vehicle, feeling that something extraordinary was happening at that moment. The silence was broken only by the wind whispering through the dry grass, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. His steps were cautious, carried by an energy that mixed professional compassion with an inexplicable feeling of connection. When he finally approached, Michael realized that this was not just another abandoned animal. Zeus had a spark in his eyes that transcended physical suffering, a flicker of dignity, a last remnant of hope that resisted all adversities. The veterinarian knew that every second would be crucial. The ticks were not just external parasites, but a living metaphor of how neglect can completely consume a living being. His hand, initially hesitant, touched the horse's neck. It was a touch that was not just technical, but charged with an almost sacred energy of restoration. Zeus shivered lightly, not out of fear, but as if recognizing in that touch a possibility of redemption. Michael felt something profound at that moment. It was not just an animal rescue, but the beginning of a journey of transformation that would go beyond the physical boundaries. The approaching storm seemed to symbolize the moment of rupture. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, creating a natural drama that complemented the scene. Michael knew he would need to act quickly. Every minute would be decisive for Zeus's survival. In his eyes, a determination sprang that surpassed any traditional veterinary protocol. Something drove him to see in that horse not a patient, but a being with a story, with a soul crying out for a second chance. Destiny had prepared that encounter. Michael was not there by chance. His arrival at that exact moment seemed orchestrated by a higher force, as if the universe had conspired to interrupt Zeus's cycle of abandonment and suffering. In the vastness of that moment, Michael discovered that Zeus was not just an abandoned horse, but a being with a profound history of resilience that transcended his physical condition. Each tick on his body seemed to tell a narrative of pain and hope, revealing layers of suffering that went beyond the visible. As he carefully examined the animal, the veterinarian noticed something extraordinary in Zeus's eyes, a gleam of dignity that resisted despite all adversities. It was as if an inner force still kept a flame of hope burning, defying the abandonment and cruelty surrounding him. The connection between Michael and Zeus went beyond the limits of a simple human-animal relationship. There was something almost mystical about that meeting, as if destiny had orchestrated every detail for that moment to happen precisely that way. The wind's whispers seemed to tell ancient secrets, confirming that this would not just be a rescue, but a transformation. The horse's muscles, once stiffened by pain and despair, began to show the first signs of hope. Michael noticed how each careful touch elicited a subtle reaction in Zeus, not fear, but recognition that someone was willing to help. The deepest revelation came when Michael realized that Zeus was not just a victim, but a survivor. Every scar, every tick mark represented a battle won, a story of persistence that defied the logic of survival. The horse was not a defeated animal, but a warrior waiting for his chance to be reborn. The farm's sounds seemed to conspire at that moment. The wind through the dry grass, the distant lowing of cattle, the creaking of old barns, creating a symphony that celebrated that reunion with hope. Michael felt that his mission there went far beyond a simple veterinary treatment. The veterinarian's intuition alerted him. Zeus needed more than medication. He needed understanding, a gaze that saw his essence beyond physical suffering. Each tick removed would not just be a parasite, but a symbol of a past that would be definitively left behind. In that instant of revelation, Michael understood that his encounter with Zeus was not casual. It was a calling, a mission that the universe had specially prepared for him, to rescue not just a horse, but to restore the dignity of a being the world had abandoned. Michael began treating Zeus with a mix of professional determination and an almost mystical connection that transcended the simple veterinary act. His movements were precise and delicate, as if each gesture carried the responsibility of restoring not just a physical body, but a long-wounded spirit. Removing the ticks was a painful and meticulous process. Each parasite removed represented more than a mechanical cleaning action. It was an act of rescue and hope. Michael used special solutions, moving his hands with a delicacy that surprised even the nature of the task. The strong smell of antiseptic mixed with the scent of damp earth and suffering, creating an atmosphere charged with expectation. Zeus initially and instinctively resisted the touch. His body, marked by years of abandonment, was not accustomed to gentle contacts. Every movement Michael made was accompanied by whispers of encouragement, a silent language trying to break through the barriers of distrust built up over years of neglect. The farm's owners watched the scene with a mixture of indifference and irritation. To them, Michael represented an unnecessary interference in their optimization plans. Robert, the foreman, circled nearby, casting disapproving glances every time the veterinarian spent more time and care than what was considered economically viable. Hours passed and the work continued. Michael removed dozens of ticks, each carefully extracted to prevent fragments from remaining on the already abused skin. Zeus gradually began to show signs of trust. His eyes, once dull and resigned, gained a timid glow of hope. The horse's skin, once covered by a dark layer of parasites, began to reveal its true tone. Old and new wounds were identified and treated with a combination of healing ointments and special dressings. Michael knew that healing would be a slow process, requiring not only medical treatment but also emotional recovery. During breaks in the treatment, Michael quietly conversed with Zeus, as if the animal could understand every word. Stories of overcoming, promises of better days, communication that went beyond conventional language. The veterinarian knew that physical recovery directly depended on the animal's self-confidence recovery. The farm's sounds, the distant hum of machinery, the lowing of cattle, the creaking of wooden fences, served as a backdrop for that silent transformation. Zeus, little by little, began to reveal his true nature, not a disposable animal, but a being full of dignity and inner strength. Each bandage, each moment of affection represented more than a veterinary treatment. It was a silent declaration against the cruelty of abandonment, an act of resistance challenging the cold logic of the new owners who saw Zeus only as a dispensable cost. The afternoon advanced, and so did Michael's determination. He knew he was doing more than saving a horse. He was rewriting a story of hope, challenging a system that discarded lives as if they were worthless objects. Sophia, the young daughter of the farm owner, represented a point of light amidst the aridity of the property. Her green eyes, always attentive, caught details adults ignored, especially when it came to Zeus. Unlike her father and the workers, she saw beyond the horse's debilitated appearance, recognizing his resilient soul. Since childhood, Sophia had developed a special connection with animals. While the men discussed costs and productivity, she observed Zeus with a compassion that transcended economic logic. Her moments in the field were marked by silent visits to the horse, bringing small pieces of apple or hay in a gesture of pure tenderness. The relationship between Sophia and Zeus was almost magical. In the moments she approached, the horse seemed to transform, slightly lifting his head, his eyes gaining a different sparkle. It was as if between them existed a secret language, understood only by sensitive spirits who recognized each other's pain. The young girl began to openly question her father's plans to abandon Zeus. Her arguments, initially timid, gained strength and conviction. She brought up points about compassion, about the value of a life that went beyond immediate economic utility. Her words were like seeds sown in barren ground, hoping to germinate in the adult's consciousness. Confrontations with her father became increasingly frequent. Robert, the foreman, and other workers watched that dynamic with a mix of annoyance and admiration. Sophia represented a force of transformation, questioning traditional practices and defending a horse everyone had already sentenced to death. Interestingly, her determination grew proportionally with Michael's arrival. The veterinarian's presence brought new elements to her silent battle. She saw in Michael not just a professional, but an ally in her mission to save Zeus. Together, they formed an unlikely but powerful duo, united by the desire to reverse an unjust sentence. The moments when Sophia assisted Michael in treating Zeus were filled with special energy. Her hands, delicate yet firm, helped with cleaning and applying bandages, creating an atmosphere of care and hope. Each gesture was a declaration of love against the surrounding indifference. The transformation was not only of Zeus, but also of Sophia. Each day by the horse made her stronger, more determined. Her eyes gained a depth beyond her age, revealing a maturity built through the fight for compassion. She was discovering her own power of transformation, using her voice to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. The farm, once a place of rigidity and insensitivity, began to experience small cracks in its inflexible structure. At the center of these transformations, Sophia emerged as a force of nature, determined to prove that kindness could be stronger than profit, that empathy could overcome indifference. The emotional conflict intensified on the farm, where Sophia, the owner's daughter, felt deeply disturbed by Zeus's situation. Her eyes, once accustomed to the mechanical routine of rural work, now carried a complexity that transcended familial boundaries. Sophia's father represented the traditional archetype of the pragmatic farmer, for whom animals were merely economic assets. His cutting words echoed through the environment. "We can't waste time and resources on an animal that doesn't produce." Each of his phrases seemed like a death sentence for Zeus, a blow to Sophia's sensitivity. The young girl experienced an intense moral dilemma. On one side, family loyalty and bonds of respect with her father. On the other, an inexplicable compassion for Zeus, whose suffering deeply touched her. Her heart pulsed with an internal conflict, torn between obedience and love for beings who cannot defend themselves. Michael observed this family dynamic, understanding that his intervention would not be just veterinary, but also an emotional transformation process. His silent presence acted as a catalyst, provoking deeper reflections on empathy and the value of life. Moments of tension were punctuated by broken conversations, meaningful glances, and a heavy silence hanging over the environment. Sophia felt that each argument with her father represented more than a discussion about a horse. It was a battle for principles, for a more compassionate vision of the world. Zeus's treatment continued, becoming almost a metaphor for the family's own struggle. Each tick removed symbolized layers of prejudice being deconstructed. Each treated wound represented the possibility of healing not just physically but relationally. The farm, with its old machinery and rusty fences, witnessed this internal clash. The wind whispered stories of transformation, as Sophia felt a courage grow within her that she never imagined possessing. Michael, with his characteristic calm, offered silent support. His presence acted as a balance between the father's hardness and Sophia's sensitivity, suggesting that there are paths beyond extremes, possibilities for mutual understanding. Sophia's dilemma became increasingly complex. Defending Zeus meant challenging not just her father, but an entire cultural structure that viewed animals as mere instruments. Her fight was intimate and universal at the same time, representing the voice of those who cannot speak for themselves. As the day advanced, Sophia's inner battle took on more defined contours. Her young and sensitive soul confronted ancient traditions. Her heart defied the cold logic of profit, creating a moment of profound personal and family transformation. The storm advanced over the farm like an invisible army, carrying dense clouds and howling winds that shook the old trees around. Zeus, still undergoing treatment, felt every vibration of nature in his fragile body. Michael continued his tireless work, knowing that every minute would be crucial for the horse's survival. The first heavy drops of rain began to fall, creating dark patches on the dusty ground. The sky, once gray, was now transforming into a mantle of threatening darkness. The sounds of the storm were deafening. Thunder rumbled like the cries of a primitive force, briefly illuminating the scene with terrifying white flashes. Zeus shivered, not just from the cold, but from a deep sense of vulnerability. His muscles, long weakened by ticks and abandonment, could barely support him. Michael noticed every tremor of the animal, every spasm revealing the thin line between life and death. Michael's pickup was parked nearby, but the distance felt like an eternity in that critical moment. The winds whipped everything around, tearing leaves from trees and carrying debris through the air. It was as if nature itself was testing the veterinarian's determination and Zeus's resilience. Inside the small improvised shelter, Michael prepared equipment and medications, aware that humidity and cold could be more lethal than the ticks themselves. His hands, once precise in every cleaning movement, now trembled slightly from the moment's tension. Zeus fought against his own body. Every breath was a challenge, every movement an act of courage against the forces seemingly conspiring for his end. His eyes, once dull, now shone with an almost supernatural intensity, a flash of hope amidst the devastating storm. The veterinarian knew that this would be the decisive moment. The tick infestation had left the horse extremely debilitated, and the storm represented the final challenge. Would Zeus be able to withstand it? Would Michael be able to save him? Rain poured in torrents, creating small streams on the farm's ground. The sound was deafening, a symphony of destruction seemingly wanting to engulf everything around. In the center of this chaos, a man and a horse waged their silent battle for survival. Michael began applying medications, his hands moving with almost surgical precision. Every injection, every bandage was a cry of defiance against the destiny that tried to snatch Zeus's life. The storm seemed to watch, as if it were a silent judge deciding the final outcome of that struggle. The moments that followed would be crucial. Zeus's vital force would be tested to its maximum. Nature, relentless in its fury, seemed to want to exact its price, while Michael tirelessly fought to keep the horse alive, turning that moment of apparent tragedy into a possibility of rebirth. In the critical moment of his journey, Zeus experienced a revelation that transcended the simple physical aspect of his recovery. The approaching storm seemed to be a metaphorical reflection of his own inner transformation, creating an atmosphere charged with mystery and hope. During the height of the storm, something extraordinary happened. The winds howled around the old barn, and lightning split the sky in intense light streaks, as if the universe were witnessing a unique moment of rebirth. Zeus, who had previously seemed a frail and hopeless body, found within himself an almost supernatural strength. His muscles, once weakened by ticks and abandonment, began to respond with unexpected vitality. It was as if each raindrop falling on his body brought with it a renewal energy, washing not only his skin but also his wounded soul. His eyes, once dull and resigned, gained an intense gleam of determination. Michael watched that scene with a mixture of admiration and surprise. His experience as a veterinarian had never prepared him for such a sublime moment. Zeus was not just an animal recovering. He was a being transforming his own destiny. Every movement of the horse seemed to defy the expectations of death and abandonment weighing down on him. The storm continued, but Zeus remained steadfast. His hooves, once dragging from weakness, now touched the ground with renewed confidence. It was as if an ancestral force sustained him, an energy beyond human comprehension. Michael felt he was witnessing something more than a simple animal rescue. It was an almost mystical rebirth. At that moment, Zeus demonstrated resilience that surpassed any expectation. His ability to stand, even with all the past suffering, became a living testament to hope. The ticks that once consumed him seemed insignificant compared to that inner strength now animating him. The revelation was clear. Zeus would not be defined by his past of abandonment, but by his capacity for overcoming. Every tremor of his body was a silent cry of resistance, every breath a declaration that he was alive and willing to fight. Michael, witnessed a transformation that went far beyond veterinary treatment. It was a true rebirth of the soul. The rain began to lessen, the lightning faded, and Zeus remained standing. His body, once covered in ticks and wounds, now reflected an almost epic dignity. It was as if nature itself had chosen him as a symbol of hope and transformation. That unique moment, it became evident that Zeus's fate would not be dictated by his past wounds, but by his extraordinary ability to be reborn. The external storm had become a perfect reflection of his inner storm, violent, challenging, but ultimately transformative. Michael gazed at that scene with tears in his eyes, understanding that he had witnessed something far beyond a simple animal rescue. It was a miracle of renewal, a living proof that hope can sprout in the most unlikely places, defying all expectations and rewriting stories of abandonment into narratives of triumph. The approaching storm seemed to carry more than just heavy clouds. On the farm's horizon, Michael and Sophia understood that they would need to make a crucial decision about Zeus's fate. The old horse, now clean and showing signs of recovery, represented more than an abandoned animal. It was a symbol of hope and resistance. Sophia looked anxiously at Michael, her eyes revealing a mixture of determination and fear. She knew convincing her father would be an almost impossible task. The farm owner saw Zeus only as an additional cost, a problem to be eliminated to optimize the property's resources. The dilemma was complex. Taking Zeus to a safe sanctuary would mean challenging paternal authority and possibly breaking family ties. Michael understood the risks, but also knew he couldn't abandon the horse after all the treatment and emotional connection they had developed. The decisive conversation would need to happen that night. Every word would be crucial. Every argument could completely change Zeus's fate. Sophia mentally prepared herself to face her father, knowing that her love for the horse outweighed any threat of family conflict. Michael organized his arguments mentally, gathering all evidence of Zeus's recovery, his veterinary records, photographs of the treatment, and medical reports would serve as testimony to the animal's transformation. It would not just be an emotional appeal, but a well-founded and rational proposal. The tension rose with every passing minute. In the barn, Zeus remained silent, as if understanding that his fate would be decided in the coming hours. His gaze, once dull and resigned, now shone with an almost palpable hope. Nightfall approached, carrying the possibility of a radical change. Zeus's destiny hung by a thread, depending solely on Michael and Sophia's courage to defend his cause. It would be a moment of confrontation, but also of potential transformation for everyone involved. The farm seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the outcome of a story that went far beyond a simple abandoned horse. It was a narrative about compassion, courage, and the possibility of rewriting seemingly predetermined destinies. The climax moment arrived loaded with tension and expectation. In the center of the dark barn, illuminated only by slivers of moonlight, Michael and Sophia faced Sophia's father, determined to save Zeus. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the very destiny of the horse hung in the air. The father, a rugged man, accustomed to making practical decisions based on profit, looked at Zeus with a look of disdain. His eyes scanned the horse's body, still marked by wounds but now clean, and showing clear signs of recovery. Michael held the veterinary documents, concrete proof of Zeus's potential to fully recover. "This animal is useless," declared the farmer, his voice sharp as a blade. "It only consumes resources without giving anything back." Sophia stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Dad, Zeus isn't just an object. He has life. He has a soul. Michael has healed him, and he deserves a chance," Michael added, presenting the treatment documents. Each paper represented not just technical data, but a story of hope and resilience. They showed wounds healing, signs of recovery, the almost miraculous transformation Zeus had undergone. The confrontation was more than a discussion about a horse. It was a clash between worldviews, the cold logic of profit versus compassion, disposal versus preservation of life. Zeus, a silent witness, remained standing, his gaze fixed on the men as if understanding the weight of that moment. The tension was cutting. Sophia's father crossed his arms, his face hardened by tradition and the habit of seeing animals only as commodities. But something in his daughter's determined look began to crack his rigidity. Michael told Zeus's story, not with technical words, but with the narrative of a being that survived abandonment, that resisted when all seemed lost. Every word was an appeal not just to reason but to humanity. Sophia, with tears in her eyes but a steady voice, said the phrase that would be the turning point. "Dad, saving Zeus isn't about him. It's about who we choose to be, about the compassion that defines us as humans." A deep silence fell over the barn. Zeus whinnied softly, as if part of that negotiation. The horse didn't beg, didn't plead for mercy. His presence was a silent declaration of dignity and hope. Sophia's father closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had changed. The hardness in his gaze gave way to a deeper understanding. It wasn't just about a horse. It was about recognizing the value of life beyond economic calculations. "All right," he finally said, his voice breaking the silence. "You can take him, but I want to oversee the process." The victory was more than saving Zeus. It was the transformation of a heart, the breaking of a cycle of indifference. In that moment, in the old barn lit by the moon, something magical happened. Compassion triumphed. Sophia's father, after a moment of deep reflection, surprised everyone with an unexpected reaction. His calloused hands, once symbols of hardness and practicality, trembled subtly as he touched the documents Michael had presented. The initial coldness began to dissolve, revealing a layer of humanity long hidden beneath the rural owner's facade. "You can take Zeus," he declared, his hoarse voice carrying a mix of resignation and something approaching understanding. The "say-do-you-why" words echoed through the old barn, transforming that space of abandonment into a place of possible redemption. The farmer looked at Sophia, and in his eyes, there was more than just permission to take the horse. There was a silent plea for forgiveness. Sophia hugged her father, a gesture that symbolized more than familial affection. It was the recognition that compassion could be a more powerful force than any economic convention. Michael watched the scene, feeling that this moment transcended the simple rescue of an animal. It was a transformation of souls. Preparations for Zeus's transfer began immediately. Robert, the foreman, helped with an unusual willingness, as if aiding in the horse's rescue washed away some old guilt. Every movement was careful, every gesture carried a newfound respect. News of the rescue spread quickly around the farm. The older workers commented among themselves, seeing in that act a break from old disposal practices. Zeus was no longer just an abandoned animal, but a symbol of hope and transformation. Practical details were quickly organized. Michael prepared his pickup, adapting it for Zeus's safe transport. Sophia assisted, her movements revealing a deep connection with the horse that went far beyond a simple gesture of pity. Every preparation detail was done with almost ritualistic care. Sophia's father, surprisingly, offered resources to assist with the transfer. His change of attitude was as dramatic as Zeus's recovery. Documents were prepared, ensuring that the horse would receive all necessary medical care in his new destination. When Zeus was gently led out of the barn, something magical happened. The horse, once a symbol of abandonment, now walked with renewed dignity. His steps, once hesitant, were now firm and confident. It was as if each step represented not just his physical recovery, but a spiritual liberation. The farm seemed different at that moment. The once barren fields now had a different light, as if Zeus's rescue had brought a renewal energy to the entire environment. The fences, the machinery, the usual sounds, all seemed touched by that transformation. Michael watched everything with a mix of emotion and professional satisfaction. He knew that this rescue represented much more than saving a horse. It was an act of restoring the connection between humans and animals, a rebuilding of values based on compassion and respect for life. Zeus's journey towards a new destiny had begun, no longer as a disposable animal, but as a being full of dignity and hope. The farm was left behind, not as a place of abandonment, but as the setting for an unlikely and moving transformation. At the animal sanctuary, Zeus experienced the beginning of a new life, completely transformed. His hooves, once covered with ticks and marks of abandonment, now walked gracefully over the green, fertile grass. The recovery was not just physical, but a deep journey of restoring dignity and hope. Michael and Sophia visited Zeus regularly, establishing a connection that transcended the boundaries between humans and animals. Each visit represented more than just a meeting. It was the celebration of an unlikely friendship born amidst suffering. The horse, once considered disposable, now shone with a vitality that inspired everyone around him. The sanctuary became more than just a place of refuge, transforming into a symbol of redemption. Other rescued animals found there not only care, but a chance to start anew. Zeus, with his story of overcoming, became a silent ambassador of compassion, inspiring caregivers and visitors alike. The transformation was not limited to Zeus alone. Sophia, deeply impacted by the horse's journey, decided to study veterinary medicine, dedicating her life to rescuing animals in vulnerable situations. Her father, once insensitive, began to support animal welfare initiatives, demonstrating a shift in perspective no one had expected. Michael continued his rescue work, carrying with him the lesson he learned from Zeus. Every life matters, no matter how unlikely its recovery may seem. His rescue stories began to circulate, inspiring others to look with more compassion at abandoned animals. The farm, once a place of disposal and indifference, began to transform. The new owners, influenced by Zeus's story, implemented more humane practices. The barn where the horse was found turned into an animal recovery center, a living memorial to the transformation that an act of compassion can provoke. Zeus, now free from ticks and the marks of abandonment, had become a symbol of hope. His strong body and bright eyes told a story of resilience and rebirth. Every scar on his skin was proof that suffering does not define a being, but their ability to overcome does. Michael and Sophia's visits always brought moments of joy and reconnection. Zeus greeted them with whinnies of happiness, as if celebrating not only his individual recovery, but the transformation his story had sparked. It was a living testament that compassion can rewrite destinies seemingly set. At the sanctuary, surrounded by care and love, Zeus found more than a new home. He discovered a purpose: to inspire, to heal, and to remind everyone that hope can sprout in the most unlikely places. His journey, from a tick-infested horse abandoned to death to a symbol of overcoming, became a narrative that touched hearts and transformed mindsets. Zeus's story echoed as a whisper of hope, reminding everyone that true wealth isn't in profits or efficiency, but in the ability to see value and dignity in every living being, no matter how unlikely their recovery may seem. In the vastness of the animal sanctuary, Zeus's story transcended the simple rescue of an abandoned horse. It became a powerful testimony about the transformation an act of compassion can provoke, echoing a profound message of hope and redemption. His journey, from abandonment on the farm to complete recovery, represented more than an individual narrative. It was a silent call for people to rethink their relationship with the beings they share this planet with, especially those who have been forgotten and marginalized. Zeus, now free from ticks and the marks of suffering, symbolized life's resilience. His eyes, once dull with hopelessness, shone with an energy that inspired everyone around him. Every movement he made told a story of overcoming, reminding that destiny is not something fixed, but a possibility in constant construction. The transformation caused by his rescue had created waves of change that went far beyond the sanctuary. Sophia, motivated by her experience with Zeus, dedicated her life to studying veterinary medicine. Her father, once insensitive, now supported animal welfare initiatives. Michael continued his rescue work, carrying with him the fundamental lesson: every life matters. But the true essence of Zeus's story was not just in his individual recovery. It was in the ability to provoke reflection, to make people question their values and disposal practices. A horse that was once considered a useless burden had now transformed into a symbol of hope and transformation. The invitation his story left was simple yet profound: to look beyond immediate economic value and recognize dignity in every living being. To understand that compassion is not a cost, but an investment in humanity. That every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the potential to rewrite stories and transform realities. Zeus was not just a saved horse. He was a silent messenger, reminding everyone that hope can sprout in the most unlikely places, that resilience dwells in the hearts of those who have been unjustly abandoned. His existence was a call for each person to look around and ask, "Where can I make a change?" Where can I be an agent of transformation? The narrative invited each viewer to reflect on their own cycles of disposal and indifference. Zeus did not beg for pity but inspired action. His story was an invitation to transform one's perspective, to look beyond appearances and recognize the intrinsic value of every life. Therefore, Zeus's legacy went far beyond his own rescue. It was a living testimony that compassion has the power to rewrite destinies, to heal deep wounds, and to create possibilities where there were once only limitations. His journey was a universal call. Everyone can be an agent of transformation. Just be willing to look with the heart. And so, in the sanctuary's silence, Zeus continued his mission, to inspire, to heal, and to remind that hope has no limits, that dignity can be restored, and that compassion is the most powerful force for change.